The next stage of thinking about using variables is to have a way of checking and controlling the variables. And for this, we start to use what we call conditional statements, i.e. when certain conditions are met, we can make something new or something different happen. So we're going to use this example here where we were working through previous, where we've got the animated ball that's now moving across the screen. And as you can see, when it gets to the end, off it goes. That's because X is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and never stops. If we just print out and check what X is doing, this is an alternative to using the console log, which will work in this particular environment quite easily. So you can see that X is getting bigger and bigger, but of course nothing's stopping it. So what we need is a condition to check, and the condition would be when X gets to the edge of the screen. Well, because X is a number, we can check the value of that when it gets to the edge of the screen, and we know the value of the edge of the screen will be 800. So when X gets to a point where it's bigger than 800, we can do something. So that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to write what we call an if statement to check whether X has got greater or less than the width of the canvas. And we're going to use the width variable. So if X is greater than the width, okay, we can check to see whether that's happened. So what we can do now is reset X back to the beginning again. So let's just see if this works and see if I've got the correct symbol in there, and I'll go on to explain a bit more in a second. So let's see what's happening now. Now then, what I've done here, you can see, is I've put the wrong symbol in, because you've got what we call a greater than and a less than symbol. So at the moment, what that's saying is if X is less than the width, which it is because X is 0, X equals 0. So at the moment, nothing is happening. However, let's put it round the right way. Okay, so now by reversing that little symbol there, okay, the greater than or less than symbol, when we play, the condition should now be the case that X isn't less than the width, and when it gets to the edge, it loops. And we can check that out by putting back our print to the console. Oops. X, and we can check and see that happening. So now we've got a very simple condition, and when X gets to a certain place, we go back to the beginning again. Okay, now there are all sorts of other ways of controlling it. We could control it without a conditional statement. We could, for example, add some easing to our speed by updating speed every time it plays. So if I create a variable here, and I'll call this one let, and this will be ease in, and I'll equal, it needs to be a small number, and you'll see why in a minute. It needs to be a number less than a whole number, because you're going to see why in a second. Because what we can do is we can slowly decrease the amount of speed. At the moment it's running at 5, okay, and if we can slowly decrease that, it's obviously going to get less and less and less. And to do that, if you multiply a whole number by a number less than 1, it's going to start going down the way. I'm going to have to increase the speed of this though. So I'm going to increase this up to 50. And here I'm going to say speed. Now what I'm using here is a shorthand, equals ease in. So on both of these I've been using a shorthand, and you'll see that a lot in code. Basically what this line x plus equals speed is saying, x equals x plus speed. So that's really saying the same thing as this line here, which we used previous. Okay, so now if things are working correctly, this should now, whoops, I've added plus rather than multiply. That's not going to help us, is it? That's just getting faster and faster. We want to multiply and equal to. So you can see now, there it goes. It doesn't need the condition because it hasn't got to the edge. What I could say is if it got past the width, something would happen now. You can see that it goes back out. Okay, and eventually speed has not got down to 0, so it's stopped. Of course you could manipulate that and start speed up again, and that's what we're going to get you to do as a little activity. Attempt to start manipulating speed and ease in and ease out, which I will go on to explain in another video. So that's your first introduction to thinking about what a conditional statement is, and we'll be using these over and over again. So we've added a bit of speed, some easing, and we're checking and playing around with it reaching the edge of the screen.